Swayam Prabha. Digital India. Educated India.
In the previous lecture, I was talking about modernization. Actually, it was when I started talking about modernization, it is in the context of the development of capitalism. Capitalism, the culture that capitalism produces, or rather the culture that actually invigorates capitalism, is supposed to be modernization. I mentioned three features of modernization, and even as I was mentioning these three features, I also had said that there are other features people or scholars have identified as the features of modernization. I talked about the universalism. Universalism also refers to is a kind of cosmopolitanism. That means an acceptance of others who don't really belong to your culture. That is also included in modernization. But as capitalism develops, scholars felt that ultimately we will end up, the whole world will converge, in terms of culture. Cultural convergence will occur, and all societies, all nation states, people will look alike. I think this is also based on the notion that ultimately the modern civilization will sort of push culture to the background, because after all, culture is only about ideas and values, and that since modernization will generate a rationalism and will make people realize that all human beings are of the same stock, and their cultural variations, if there are any, they really are only superficial. They'll become superficial because they realize that all human beings, the essential humanity of all human beings, and therefore they thought that there will be a cultural convergence. This cultural convergence is also related to the process of individualization, in the sense that modern capitalism, they said, will lead to the breakup of communities and castes and so on, because castes and communities and religions and all these things are based on ideologies which exclude others. Whereas as people start becoming more and more rational, they realize that each individual is sort of similar to the others, and that the group identities do not really matter. So there will be a process of individualization. When they were highlighting these features of modernization, actually the theorists of modernization had the Western civilization as their, in the background. They thought that the West had advanced more and all the other countries will follow them, and then cultures will merge, and the way people dress, and their styles of life will will get merged. In a way, before I become critical of this position, I want to mention that there is some element of truth in this, because if you see the world around today, you will find that our styles of life have really sort of become, what shall I say, we are all leading the same kind of lifestyles. For instance, let me say today, what's happening is that in any of the cities in India, for instance, you will in the North Indian cities you get South Indian restaurants with South Indian food, and in South Indian cities you get North Indian restaurants and with North Indian food. Not just that, you get Italian food, you get French food. There is a kind of you are now exposed to diverse cuisines in your own home, and your lifestyle, right from your morning ritual of brushing your teeth and so on, and the clothes you wear, there is some kind of convergence in terms of styles of life. All of us also go from 10 to 9 to 5 jobs, all right, and we have common holidays and so on. There's lots of things to be said. The idea of prosperity is for a household to have a good TV screen, have a good more automobile and so on. If you look at all these movies, if you look at the cities that are beamed in different parts of the world, the hotels that are there, you'll find that there are lots, the spaces that are these spaces, these metropolitan spaces have become anonymous. They can be anywhere. They're called non-spaces actually. If you go to a hotel, whether it's a 5-star hotel in Delhi or in New York or in Beijing, they all look alike. They all so more or less have the same kind of treat their guests in a similar fashion. So there is much to be said about convergence. But then divergence has become, cultural divergence has become a major theme today. Before I talk about divergence, I want to talk about how capitalism has generated a new kind of globalization. As I was mentioning the other day, capitalism, globalization is not a very new phenomenon, but contemporary globalization is a new phenomenon because it has compressed the world much more than globalization did in the 20th century or in the 19th century or in the 18th century. Of course, you can say that even Alexander's conquest, Alexander's coming to India is a part of is a kind of globalization. And now anthropologists are saying that studying the movements of primitive people in the past, they say that human beings have globalized the world long time ago. People from the Americas had crossed over thanks to the Bering Strait. It was in the Ice Age that it was the continents were joined. They went from the west to the east, and of course there are many there's evidence of Kon-Tiki and other examples, people who used to go by boats, who travel long distances by boats, all right, and who had gone across the Indian Ocean and the Pacific Ocean to reach other islands. And anthropologists say that there could have even been, some kind of international trade flourishing in the ancient times. But be that as it may, for us, we are concerned about contemporary globalization. What are the features of contemporary globalization? I've already said one of the major features of contemporary globalization is that capitalism has become stigmatized capitalism. Today, the capitalism we have is stigmatized capitalism. What do I mean by that? Earlier, as I was saying, that there was some kind of a legitimacy for capitalism, because especially in the early stages of capitalism, there was a process by which people were getting learning and getting educated as they joined the workforce, as they as they started participating in the economy, in the capitalist economy. This happened because of several factors. For instance, the workers in a factory, all right, naturally a factory will require a large number of workers, and from different backgrounds. They have to all follow the factory discipline. If the factory opens at 9, they have to be there right on dot at 9. That means they have to come from long distances. They have to wear the uniforms. They have to rub shoulders with each other. They may be from different cultures, and they learn to appreciate the other person is also a human by they're also like them, and this kind of builds up broad empathy. In fact, Marx thought that these factories will generate a class consciousness amongst the workers. The working class will become a revolutionary class because of that. He also said that the working class will also be a progressive class, because it is keen to know more and more. It came to absorb knowledge, technology, so that it can overcome the hardships that the working class faces at the during the period of industrial revolution. So the point is that there was a kind of a learning effect that will take place, and also capitalism was supposed to sort of give encouragement to competition. So there will be more and more competition, and as a consequence of this, you will find that the markets are expanding, more people will get jobs, there will be kind of a broadcasting of equality. And then they said that the consequence of all this was the many thinkers pointed out that because of this rapid industrialization, we will have what is called a bourgeoisification. It's a bourgeoisification, B-O-U-R-G-E-O-I, bourgeoisification. This is a long spelling. Bourgeois means middle class in French. I don't know why this word is used in the English language. It's a very long winding word, but anyway, this bourgeoisification refers to the process by which middle classes grow. The argument, this thesis of bourgeoisification was advanced in the 1960s, when many industrial sociologists pointed out that instead of the world splitting into two classes, capitalist and the working class or the proletariat, the world is splitting into three classes. There is one, the rich class, the capitalists, whatever you say, the rich people. Then there is the middle class, all right. Then there is the poor, right. According to some of these sociologists, what happens is, with industrialization in England, what has happened is this middle class has expanded, has become huge at the expense of the poor. This at the bottom of the hierarchy, the poor, and at the top, the rich. The rich class has shrunk, right? Or rather, if you want to put it in it's a kind of a diamond-shaped society that emerges, right, with the middle class occupying a large space and the rich and the poor occupying. There will be only a few poor people, only a small proportion of poor people, and the rich or the really rich are a tiny minority. This is what this is what they said that is this is the shape of the society that's going to develop, and they hope that with this rise of the middle classes, a kind of a modernization, all right, a kind of a new society will be formed. But this did not come to be today, because modern contemporary globalization has given the society another twist. What's that twist? It's become the contemporary globalization. What it has done is that it has changed the social structures quite radically. How? Instead of this diamond shaped structure, what has happened is that what has happened is that the working class is disappearing today. Why? Because manufacturing industries have taken to the use of computerized machines and robots, so the number of workers that corporations need to produce cars or anything, has shrunk, all right. And as a result of which, what has happened is that the number of workers has reduced, and there only a big factory producing 1,000 cars per day can be operated on with a small workforce, all right, which whose work will mainly be to monitor computers and see that everything is in order. They are required to really their job will be more or less regulatory than really that their work doesn't really require any highly skilled operation. The machines have taken over the skills, as a result of which what has happened is the working class has shrunk. On the other hand, as the working class shrunk, what you notice is that what you notice as the working class shrinks is the servicing sector. Services sector has grown enormously, because it is the service sector that becomes more important now, because when with all this computerization, and now they are going to have artificial intelligence, and artificial intelligence is coming in a very big way. And in this knowledge economy, what is happening is that more than manufacturing is there, all right. For instance, let me give you the example of Xerox machines, photocopying machines. Photocopying machines, when you buy a photocopying machine, along with it, it's a very interesting thing. When you buy a photocopying machine, it's actually you are buying not the machine itself, that a time slot when you can use the machine. The photocopying machine people, when they sell you, they say that we will service the machine. You can't go to any other any other dealer, any other company, or any mechanic to go repair your to repair your machine. In fact, they will monitor the work the machine does. On the number of copies that the machine produces, you have to give some an amount to the company. So this is the way. What's happening is services are becoming getting to be major components of even these machines when they are sold. When you buy a car, they will say that you also buy the servicing contract, so that they will annual maintenance will be a contract you can arrive at. Same with washing machines and all these durable consumer goods. so that televisions and so on and so forth. So what happens is that the services, of course, there are these, this is the new trend. Now we have call centers in which people just go there and answer queries from the company, from the given company. Like if it's an airline company, the people there sitting there in front of computer panels, they will help you book an air ticket or cancel an air ticket or rebook your ticket. Everything you can do from the call center. Similarly, bank transactions, you want to find out, if you want to, you can use call center. Actually, call centers became a very profitable investment in India, because Indian call centers, India will, because of Indian, when it is day in India, it is night in America. So when it's day in America, it's night here. So therefore, when people sitting here, in these call centers can answer queries from bank clients in America about their accounts, about whether their transactions have been, performed, what are the problems and what are the complaints they have, and so on and so forth. So these kinds of servicing sector, for instance, services means tourism also, tourism operators, right? And any number of hospital services. You see, hospitals also, can play a very, very vital role in exporting their services. You see, for instance, our Apollo Hospital. If you go to Delhi Apollo Hospital, or even wherever Apollo hospitals are, they have such a big international reputation that many patients from all over the world come to Apollo hospitals for treatment, for surgical operations and all that. And Apollo, hospitals is actually in a kind of a health tourism. All right, you want to get your heart repaired, get a wall put into your heart. You can come to India. They will give you 5-star treatment. They'll put you up, and then you get your surgery done. After 3 days, they will discharge you, and you go home. All right, this kind of servicing has become international, has gone global. So these services have become more prominent as a and then another very important issue is that even as this is happening, modern technology, unlike the bulky, technology of today's technology, unlike the bulky technology of the past, huge using what shall I say, lathe. Lathe is a very good example. In the past, in the 1950s, and even in 1970s, HMT used to produce lathes, and doing work on lathe is a skilled operation. You have to learn over several, at least several months, how to handle the lathe, how to, do the job according to the specifications, the drawing specifications that is given. Today, the lathe is computerized. All that you have to do is to press the button to switch it on and switch it off. And only if there is any, already the program, the kind of work that the lathe has to do, the depth to which the lathe has to cut the particular cylinder or something that is fixed on the machine and it's rotating fast, is all already fed into the computer, through a program. All that you have to do is to finish, to sort of take it out. So, but in this process, what happens is that you are learning. You don't have to learn skills. That's one. And then modern computer technology, all right, has done, for instance, computer programming, all right. There are a special program if you don't know word processing, if you don't know how to use word program on the computer. Now There are books available, or even on the internet. You can get what is called Windows for dummies, all right? Or you want to do try to use a spreadsheet, that's a particular program for accounting. There is a, you can there are not only books for dummies. Dummies means, people who don't know anything, all right? For them, it is these books make it easy to follow instructions and learn the program. So what has happened is, more and more, instead of the man changing to the needs of the machine, as in the case of in the past the technology in the past, today machines are changing to the needs, the requirements of human beings. I'll give you the requirements of cultures, for instance. I'll give you one very good example of this. For instance, you have watches which show the direction to Mecca, wherever, whether you are in plane or whether you are on land or whether you are going by train or bus. The watch exactly shows the distance to Mecca and also points out when it is namaz time, all right. So instead of making you less religious, it makes it easy for you to become more religious, all right. Similarly, in the case of other religions, for instance, in Hinduism, there are early morning prayers to wake up God, are available on computers, or they come on TV. So it becomes very easy for one to remain in one's culture wherever one goes, all right. You may go abroad, all right. You may be living in a strange, you may be actually in a national park, which in which remote jungles. But even then, you can you have these computerized cell phones and others. They will tell you, they will bring you your songs. They will bring you Hindi songs. Many of my friends abroad have deeper knowledge of Hindi film music, both old time film music as well as modern film music, because modern Bollywood music, because it's all available to them. Very easy. It's become easily accessible to them, and even religious rituals can be easily performed, because there are these cassettes which read out the right kind of mantras to perform these rituals. So what I'm trying to say is that modern technology, contemporary technology, pampers, sort of massages the individuals. Not only that, they also entice the individual. How? Because if you are interested in games, computer games, all right, they can make you become addicted to computer games, all right. They can, if you want to shop for something, it's very easy, it's there's this Amazon portal, there's Flipkart and many other business portals. All that you have to do is to go through the portals and find out, get the right information, and you can even buy buy the stuff. You want a good shirt, you have a particular color, and of a particular, you fancy a particular shape of the shirt, you can buy it. You can buy bicycles, you can buy so many things, books, you can buy pens, you can buy toiletries, anything in these portals. But what I'm trying to say is that as a result, individuals, see what's happening is, on the one hand, it can cater to religiosity. On the other hand, it can cater to your hedonistic instincts, to your pleasures, to your pleasure needs. In fact, you can get, nowadays you have these food caterers, so that, food apps, all right, that, they bring you, you just have to click the button and you get the, whatever food you want whether you want street food or expensive restaurant food, you can get it at home. So it made your life so comfortable, so much so as a one, also you can see films, all right, and all these things you can do. So as a result, you can be cut off completely from the rest of the world. You need not have to interact with anybody, and you can enjoy the pleasure of watching films and so on. All right, it pampers you. It also gives you pleasures. Third, modern technology, all right, is also another thing. What has happened is with television media and with social media. What social media is, this WhatsApp groups, right? WhatsApp, that's the app that's available on mobiles, or with Twitter, or with Facebook. What you can contact people all over. If you want to find out what the Prime Minister is thinking, all that you have to do is to become the Prime Minister's follower. And invariably it so happens that when you start using these social media, you actually create vacuum chambers. This is called vacuum chambers. All right, because what happens is that echo chambers, in the sense that you come across people in your social media who think just like you, whose opinions and ideas you appreciate. So what happens is, gradually you will become a closed circle. People, instead of learning new things, you get entrapped by a circle of people who think like you, or who are more extremist like you, or they will make you more extremist, in the sense that you'll start because you have psychologically you're inclined to their beliefs and value systems. You also become part of you also accept the way they interpret the world around them. So what happens in these echo chambers is that only it becomes more and more extremist positions become amplified several times, and they spread. So what, as a consequence of social media, as a consequence of this, social media, what it is doing is to amplify prejudices of people instead of diluting prejudices of people. All right. So this is the world in which we are living. The point is, what is the consequence of all this? What is the social consequence of all this? This is the big question. As I've already mentioned in the previous lectures, that some scholars, especially Iranian scholars, started, who proposed this. They talk about West toxification, right? What is this West toxification about? You see, in the 60s and 70s, the term Westernization was popular in sociology. Westernization was the transmission of Western values to the rest of the world. What are these values? The Western society was supposed to be more egalitarian. Western society promoted the ideas of democracy, and the Western society promoted the idea of humanitarian ideas and ideas of rationality and so on. So everyone, the prescription was, this is another form of modernization really. Although modernization, people say that modernization, India was already modernized earlier, and that India doesn't have to learn modernization from the West. Westernization is a, Westernization is a term which attributes, which gives false, which unnecessarily gives the West the weightage that it doesn't deserve. But people who talk about critics of Westernization, especially the Iranian critics, they said that Westernization is not a good thing. It's actually a bad thing. It is Westernization is West toxification. That means it is toxifying our minds, our attitudes. People are becoming Western societies are pleasure-seeking societies, and Westernization means hedonism. The pursuit of pleasure becomes an end in itself. And then not only that, Sayyid Qutb, who was one of the founders, I think he was the founder of Islamic Brotherhood, he visited America in the 1950s and came back and reported that America promotes free sex, and it promotes alcoholism. It promotes values of godless. It's a godless society, and it is ruining our civilizations. And so therefore we have to reject the Western civilization. He said even that even the institution of democracy they decry, because they say that democracy, freedom of choice means people will veer away from the path of God. Democracy, according to these people who talk about West toxification, is also an evil institution. In fact, it's not just the Muslim clerics who said this. Even Gandhi, in his earlier work on Hind Swaraj, has mentioned Western civilization is evil. Anyway, that I've already mentioned it earlier. The point is that Gandhi had said it at the time when, at a time he had anticipated that this will happen. And today it's actually happening with great force. On the one hand, I said that contemporary globalization, as I said, that the economic structures it has evolved are so porous that it's very easy to, it actually incentivizes corrupt methods. It incentivizes, illegal activities on the one hand, and morally also, these religious preachers, clerics, pointed out that it not only it more than it is an anti-God, culture that's created, hedonism that's created, that is not that it makes women sort of massages sexuality of both men and women and so on and so forth. Therefore, they became ardent opponents of this entire program, this entire modernization that's produced by contemporary globalization. Now, why is that happened? Why has that happened? I've already hinted at many of the technological changes that have contributed to this kind of evolution of society in this way. But more importantly, according to some people, the way the social trends are developing are becoming very dangerous. You see, that's because according to them, according to, for instance, Samuel Huntington, who wrote about, who talked about clash of civilizations. He says that now there is, the world is split into, different civilizations based on different religions. Why does he say that? He says, for instance, look at this, look at what is happening to fundamentalism, rise of fundamentalist Islam. Is he's worried about it, because he says, what is fundamentally? He says fundamentalist Islam is sort of anti-modern civilization. How? First of all, we should understand what is fundamentalism. Fundamentalism, according to me, is a belief system which stresses that if the practice, if the reality is the ecology, the ecosystem in which an ideology operates is such that it is going against the ecology is going against the ideology, the ideals, then you don't have to, the thing, if there is a dissonance between ideals and the reality, what you do is, you don't change your ideals to suit reality, but you change the reality to suit your ideals, all right. If so that means that it makes it morally incumbent on you to change the world, change relationships, change structures, change institutions, such that it adheres to the values and ideals that your religion preaches. All right, this is fundamentalism. There is Islamic fundamentalism, there is Christian fundamentalism, and you can talk of, although people say that Hindutva is also fundamentalistic, I don't know what the core ideals of Hindutva. It's therefore I am not willing to say that it's a fundamental, but there is definitely a movement towards fundamentalism, even in Hindu ideals. But that I want to leave that aside. I don't want to get into the controversy on that. But what's very important for me is that these rise of fundamentalisms have occurred, and one of the reasons for, as a result of the outcome of these fundamentalisms has been, as we all know, Islamic terrorism and the backlash against Islamic world because of this terrorism, what's called Islamophobia, which targets all Muslims, all right, and the hatred that it generates, all right. All these things have, are producing what is called, what Samuel Huntington called the clash of civilizations, all right. And this, along with this, the fact that the global economic structure that we have is also becoming immoral, because, as I said, that it provides a wide scope for immoral activities, for corrupt activities, also induces, takes you towards, it's sort of what shall I say, points out that the world that we live in, instead of getting, there was a hope earlier, as I said, I was talking about convergence of cultures. This would have been a secular convergence. Now what we are facing is, we are facing a world, this contemporary globalization is producing a world which is generating religious divergence. Well, in India we call it polarization. Religious divergence is occurring. Instead of convergence, divergence is occurring. But what is very interesting, nevertheless, is that this divergence in ideas and ideals are happening. Cultures are becoming, cultural assertions are becoming very forceful. But at the same time, if you look at the as I said, consumption styles, if you look at the shops and so on, you find that more or less people, there is a kind of a materialist consumption, materialist convergence. All of us need TV, all of us need computers, whichever religion you belong, you need computers, you use air travel, there is no bar and going by plane, all right. You use the comforts of air conditioning, you're also, your styles of life may also be, coming, sort of getting homogenized. Your style of life may be getting homogenized. So this is also happening. This is a very, very interesting play of, on the one side, a kind of material the convergence of material culture, and on the other side, divergence along religious lines. In India, one can also say this is happening. Differences are emerging, even even within the Hindu fold, even within Islamic fold. Muslims, community castes and communities are asserting themselves, especially the lower castes are asserting themselves. So what contemporary globalization is doing is that it is, instead of we all thought we will reach a stage of modernity. Actually, we have and also incidentally, Marx said that with the growth of capitalism will develop, with the development of capitalism, ultimately religion, after all, is the opiate of the masses, and it will disappear very soon, and human beings will be will be scientific and will not need any religious crutch. Marx said, for instance, that very interesting. Marx said that religion makes people attribute what they achieve, what they do, to God. Only it's because of God I have done it. Now this the flow, the growth of the development of capitalism will kill God. It becomes a godless world. Individuals have to face squarely the world. If there will be troubles, of course, there will be insecurities, of course, but individuals will have to face these problems squarely, and they can't attribute it to God. Some people say that this means that human beings are becoming gods, all right. This is in fact human beings, according to this thesis, according to some geologists, they put across a thesis called the Anthropocene, era of the Anthropocene, in which they said that human scientific and technological developments have become so powerful today. What do we mean by the term Anthropocene? The philosopher Nietzsche, the Western philosopher, way back in the late 19th century, proposed that the development of the world is moving towards a stage when you can say God is dead, all right. Human beings themselves are taking over the powers of God. Now Anthropocene is a scientific, is a term that expresses this idea, all right. Is a scientific, now it's going to become a scientific term, because the International Union of Geologists are contemplating accepting this idea of the age of the Anthropocene. What does this mean? What does and the age of the Anthropocene means? Anthro means human beings, and the Anthropocene means the age of the human beings. The title itself, the name itself, is that we are now entering an age of the Anthropocene. You know, the geologists and scientists, you know, they say that scientists who study biological evolution, geological evolution, they say that evolutionary periods, all right, take evolution, you can sort of classify evolution into different phases depending on, you know, during the era when the dinosaurs were roaming, they were several billion years ago, and then that dinosaurs died, and then another era began, Pleistocene and other eras they mentioned. They say that about 10,000 years ago there was the Ice Age, all right, that killed many animals, and then you know, they also say that about 40 million years ago human beings, you know, erect human beings, nowadays there's a big controversy over that, you know, not a controversy. Now people say that there were humanoid species. The Homo sapiens was, earlier we thought that we were all Homo sapiens. Now they say that there are also Homo sapiens might have, you know, have intercourse, cultural and sexual also, with the Neanderthals, who were in you know, located in Europe. According to them, Homo sapiens must have overcome the weaker Neanderthals. But whatever it may be, when they talk of evolutionary phases, they talk about, you know, huge, you know, large chunks of time, millions of years, all right. And also they say that these major changes in the world, all right, occur, all right, in world's evolution occur because of massive geological, you know, changes. For instance, huge earthquakes, you know, continents split because of the underlying because of tectonic shifts underlying. And they say that, for instance, earthquake, these changes require enormous energy. Earthquakes, you know, in natural shifts of these tectonic plates create when they lead to earthquakes, and what happens is the energy that's released is of huge quantities, which, you know, changes the entire climate and makes certain types of living, you know, makes it possible for certain types of living organisms to, for certain types of organisms to, come to life. So according to them, today we have reached a stage, today means from about 200 years ago, we have now reached a stage when human beings have this power, enormous power of nature to change, to bring about a radical change in the evolutionary system. All right. According to some people, it's already happening. Every year we are losing biodiversity. Many of our, many of the organisms that existed in the world, many, animal species, plant species are getting destroyed, and now human beings, the enormous amount of carbon that the human, human beings using fossil fuels, petroleum and coal and others, they are burning, the enormous, amount of carbon that they are releasing is leading to, is making life as we know it, very precarious. if this goes on for another 50 to 60 years, it may be, we may reach, because there is global warming occurring, as a consequence of which we may reach a stage where human life as we know it may be, very strained, very stressed, may become stressful, and we will not get sunlight because of increase in carbon dioxide in the air. We will have, we have to live in hotter climates, all right, and we will have less water and less food, all right. So the entire human life can change, and human life is in danger, and is all because human beings have themselves brought about these changes. How do you combat, that's now the climate change theorists are saying that we have to come together and reduce our carbon emissions and make sure that the world becomes safe for human beings to live. This is the age of, this is what I call Anthropocene. Now, according to, so what I am trying to say is that contemporary globalization has brought about a situation where by human beings' effort, human beings' technology itself, is likely to destroy the human civilization. The consequences of contemporary globalization is not only inimical to civilizations, is raising questions about the future of humanity itself, future of the Homo sapiens species itself. This is one point. The other point is that contemporary globalization is, also, this is very important that we should keep in mind. On the one hand, this prospect of, the human life, danger to human life is there. On the other hand, if you look at it on the other side, if you are more positive, our human beings have now learned the way by which they can combine cell, can produce babies from cells, and they can they have acquired godly powers. All right. Now, if this is the case, can't human beings steer the ship called the Earth, the planet called the Earth, out of the dangers that that this human civilization is facing? All right? Can we not do it? According to me, it is that means that the human civilization, that means that there are first of all, we have to find out, there are scientists who are giving suggestions that so many things can be done to reduce carbon emissions. We will have to take, we'll have to do several things like not using too much water. We have to conserve water. We have to ensure that trees are not cut down, the forests are not cut down. Some of them say that we have to give up our non-vegetarian habits, because that is leading to deforestation on an extensive scale and so on. But even in the world of science, there is a huge controversy. There are many people, if President Trump does not buy the thesis of climate change, it's because he says that it's not scientific. It's not scientifically, there is not enough evidence, So it's a conspiracy against the American development, American society. That's what he says. And similarly, we find, for instance, there are, there will be, our cultures are becoming so diverse, and so there are so many cultural conflicts today that it is not possible to agree that we have a problem, let alone find solutions. All right? This is the conundrum in which in which we are placed as human beings. On the one hand, we have all the power to change the world. On the other hand, our differences, our cultural differences, and there is no way by which we can resolve our cultural differences. Samuel Huntington, when he talked about clash of civilizations, he said that these cultures, these civilizations can agree to a pact that you Islamic countries, you follow your Islamic law, we in the Western civilization, we follow our laws, and we can have a compact. We don't have to, sort of interfere in each other's affairs. But that is not possible. It's against the norms of Christianity, against the principles of Christianity, the principles of Islam, and so on and so forth, these proselytizing religions. So what do you do? This is the basic questions that humanity is facing, and we have come to, whether we call it, it is a kind of a postmodern conundrum into which we have entered. We have entered the era of differences and clashes of, civilizations. Thank you very much.